The galaxy was vast, full of stars, planets, and civilizations, but few names caused as much fear as the predators. They were a species built for war, merciless and cunning, their reputation spreading across hundreds of worlds like wildfire. No fleet could stand against them, no army could match their tactics, and no ruler dared oppose them. The very mention of their name made governments tremble and ordinary citizens hide in fear. Across the spiral arms, they were considered invincible. Yet, on the edge of the galactic maps, a small human colony called Nova Aegis quietly thrived. It was an ordinary world, with blue oceans, green plains, and a thin veil of atmosphere that humans had learned to manipulate to support life. To the galaxy, it seemed insignificant. To the predators, it would have seemed beneath notice. On Nova Aegis, life was simple but hard. Humans lived in scattered colonies, farming, mining, and researching. They were curious, stubborn, and resilient, though none of them imagined they were about to face the deadliest hunters the galaxy had ever known. Among the settlers, there was excitement about a new scientific experiment, a probe meant to study distant wormholes, but also unease. Strange signals had appeared in the system's outer reaches. Satellites recorded flickers in the sky, ships reported strange readings, and the animals acted nervously. Commander Lyra Vance, a young woman with sharp eyes and sharper mind, paced the observation deck of the main research station. She had grown up on the colony, learning to survive storms, fix machinery, and solve problems humans often overlooked. She looked at the readings and frowned. Something was out there, something intelligent, something that did not belong. Meanwhile, in the darkness of space, a Predator scouting ship moved with silent purpose. Its hull reflected distant stars like shards of black glass, and inside, armored figures monitored the human colony with predatory interest. Their communication was low and harsh, full of clicks and guttural sounds. They laughed when they saw the tiny human defenses, small satellites, primitive energy shields, and unarmed transport ships. "This is nothing," one of the predators growled. "They are weak. They will fall before our fleet arrives." Children played near the shimmering lakes, farmers guided robotic harvesters across fields, and scientists discussed the latest findings from their probe. Then the first signal arrived. It was a pulse, low and mechanical, hitting every communication channel in the colony. "This is a warning," Lyra said aloud, though no one had yet noticed the anomaly. "We are being observed." "Something is coming." Military personnel scrambled to man the few defensive stations they had, while scientists tried to understand what they were facing. The predators did not attack immediately. They floated above the planet, silent and confident, surveying. Then they released smaller ships, fast and deadly, to capture one human vessel. It was a transport ship carrying scientists, not even armed properly. The predators laughed when the humans tried to resist. It was easy. It was supposed to be easy, yet the humans surprised them. As the predators drew near, the transport ship activated emergency protocols. It split into multiple sections, released decoys, and sent out jamming signals that interfered with the predators' sensors. The small crew worked together flawlessly, communicating in quick bursts, calculating trajectories, and improvising solutions under extreme pressure. Lyra watched through the observation deck screen as the predators grew frustrated. "These humans are clever," one hissed. "But it is nothing. They cannot last against the fleet." They did not have the ships or weapons to fight openly, so they fought with brains, with courage, with tactics that no one would have predicted. Mining drones were reprogrammed into kamikaze drones. Satellites were rigged to explode in precise sequences. Even the simplest machinery was turned into a weapon of cunning. Every move they made seemed small, but it delayed the predators, and in the eyes of the invaders, this was unusual. For hours, the human crew of the captured transport ship led the predators on a wild chase, luring them into asteroid belts and hiding behind plasma storms. The predators tried to anticipate the humans' moves, but the humans always seemed one step ahead. "They are lucky," the predators said to each other, but deep inside, a sense of unease began to grow. Luck was not something humans relied on. They observed, they learned, they adapted. And every time the predators thought they had them cornered, the humans escaped with ingenuity. Back on Nova Aegis, the colony's leaders convened. They knew a full attack was coming. The predators would not stop at capturing a single ship. They would destroy the planet if necessary. Lyra stood before the council, her voice steady, her eyes bright with determination. "We cannot outgun them, but we can outthink them. We can use our environment, our minds, and our courage. Every trap, every distraction, every decision counts. We are not helpless. We are humans." And we survive. When the Predators finally moved in with their main fleet, confidence radiating from their massive ships, they expected no resistance. They expected fear, submission, and an easy conquest. But what they found was a planet ready to fight in ways they could not immediately understand. The first shots were fired from hidden batteries buried under the plains, launching projectiles with precision the Predators had not expected. Mines activated in asteroid belts, knocking small attack ships off course. Humans in makeshift command centers adjusted their tactics in real time, coordinating strikes that seemed random but were perfectly calculated. Every success, no matter how small, sent a ripple of frustration through the Predator fleet. Lyra coordinated with teams across the planet and in orbit. She used the colony's data networks to anticipate the Predator maneuvers, predicting which routes they would take, which ships they would target, and which tactics they would employ next. Her mind worked like a machine, constantly adapting, constantly analyzing, constantly planning. The Predators, for the first time in their history, encountered something they could not easily control. They had faced countless species, crushed civilizations, and conquered galaxies, but humans were different. They were unpredictable, clever, and relentless. Even when humans were outmatched in firepower, they created opportunities through quick thinking and bravery. Hours passed, and the Predators began to realize the truth. These humans were not simply prey. They were fighters. They adapted, they learned, and most importantly, they refused to be intimidated. With every failed strike, the Predators grew more aggressive, more reckless, and more vulnerable to the very traps they had once thought primitive. As night fell on Nova Aegis, Lyra stood on the observation deck, looking at the distant glow of the Predator fleet in orbit. She knew the battle had only just begun. The humans had won small victories, but the Predators would return stronger and angrier. Yet she felt no fear. She felt determination. They were humans, and humans had a way of surviving when all odds were against them. In the shadow of the galaxy's deadliest hunters, Nova Aegis burned bright with hope, ingenuity, and courage. For the first time, the Predators tasted resistance, and it was bitter. They had underestimated humans, as all others had, and that mistake would not be forgotten. The humans had shown the first sparks of defiance, and though the war was far from over, one thing was clear: humanity was not so easily crushed. In the depths of space, the Predators communicated with harsh clicks and guttural growls, a mixture of confusion and fury. "These humans, they are not like the others," one admitted reluctantly. Another growled, "They think, they plan, they survive." This is unexpected. But humanity had drawn its line in the galaxy. They would not bend, they would not break, and they would never surrender. The Predators, feared by all, had met their first challenge, and humanity had risen to it. The war had begun, and the humans were ready. The night sky above Nova Aegis glimmered with distant stars, but the darkness was broken by the ominous presence of the Predator fleet. Their ships were immense, black as void, bristling with weapons and sensors that hummed with deadly precision. From orbit, the humans watched as the alien vessels formed a slow, deliberate pattern, like hunters preparing to strike. Their confidence was palpable. To the Predators, this battle should have been over before it began. Commander Lyra Vance stood on the bridge of the Central Command Station, her eyes fixed on the glowing holographic display. Lines traced the positions of every ship, every satellite, every drone in orbit. Her mind worked quickly, calculating probabilities, predicting the Predator fleet's next move. Beside her, the colony leaders waited, anxious but determined. They knew they were outgunned, outmanned, and outmatched in every conventional sense. Lyra took a deep breath. "They expect fear," she said quietly. "We'll give them strategy instead." Their weapons glowed red, energy pulses capable of vaporizing human structures in moments. Yet the humans were ready. Satellite arrays, disguised as simple communication devices, activated, projecting decoy signatures and firing automated drones that mimicked human ships. Explosions erupted in space, drawing the Predators' attention and throwing their sensors into chaos. On the surface, humans manned makeshift artillery and plasma turrets salvaged from mining equipment. Farmers, engineers, and even students had been trained to fire and reload in case of attack. The first Predator strikes landed near the colony's cities, but the explosions hit empty fields and decoy structures. Civilians watched from underground shelters, hearts pounding, as their small world became the stage for a battle no one thought they could survive. Lyra's strategy was simple but bold. Humans could not match Predator firepower, but they could exploit their predictability. The predators valued precision, order, and honor in combat. They expected their opponents to be predictable, to submit, to fight in ways the aliens understood. Humans would fight differently. They would be chaotic, unpredictable, and unrelenting. Using a network of satellites and automated drones, Lyra directed fire at weak points in the Predator ships. She calculated gravitational anomalies, asteroid positions, and even the reflective properties of the planet's atmosphere. The humans' attacks were small individually, but coordinated perfectly. They created a web of hazards. Predator fighters flew into decoy energy fields, satellites launched timed explosions that disoriented their sensors, and automated drones latched onto hulls, damaging engines and weapon systems. The predators grew frustrated. "Why do they not panic?" one hissed. Another growled, scanning the orbital data. "Every move is calculated, every trap is clever. These humans, they are not like the others." Every civilian, every engineer, every scientist was part of the battle, not by choice, but by necessity. And they were rising to the challenge. On the ground, human teams activated environmental defenses. Energy grids redirected power through underground channels, creating electromagnetic pulses that temporarily disabled Predator ships in low orbit. Mines hidden beneath plains and mountains detonated with precision, taking out smaller fighters. Even simple terrain features were used strategically. Humans lured the predators into valleys where laser fire reflected unpredictably, damaging their ships and causing confusion. In the command center, Lyra focused on a single predator cruiser that had proven difficult to damage. It was larger than any other, heavily armored and bristling with weapons. She analyzed its movements, its energy output, and its response patterns. "We can't outgun it," she said aloud, "but we can outsmart it." She issued orders, coordinating a series of orbital traps, timing the detonation of drones, and redirecting energy pulses to interfere with the cruiser's targeting systems. Hours turned into a tense day. The humans were exhausted but relentless. Every victory, no matter how small, was celebrated quietly. Every setback was analyzed and corrected. The predators, once confident, now faced a species that refused to be broken. They had expected fear, surrender, and chaos, but they found organized defiance, clever traps, and strategic brilliance. Lyra's mind worked like a machine. She predicted the cruiser's next movements and set a trap using the planet's moon. Drones were deployed to mimic human ships retreating, drawing the Predator cruiser into a narrow gravitational corridor. There, hidden energy nets, invisible to alien sensors, awaited. The cruiser was caught, systems overloaded by redirected energy surges. Explosions erupted, damaging engines and forcing the vessel to retreat temporarily. The predators were shocked. Never before had one of their ships been disabled by what they assumed were primitive humans. "They learn too quickly," one hissed. "They adapt. This is unacceptable," another growled, shaking its massive clawed hand. "We will crush them. We will return with the fleet. They will regret defiance." Even the simplest equipment was transformed into instruments of war by human creativity. Lyra noticed a pattern in the predators' attacks. They relied on honor, fairness, and predictability in combat. If humans could exploit these rules, they could gain advantage. She instructed teams to feign retreats, set traps that appeared random but were highly calculated, and used deception to lure the predator ships into vulnerable positions. The predators, bound by their sense of honor, could not easily abandon the rules they had always followed. The psychological aspect of the battle became as important as the physical. Humans broadcast false signals, creating illusions of larger fleets. Predator sensors detected activity where none existed, causing confusion and hesitation. Every human move was calculated to manipulate alien expectations, forcing the predators to act hastily or waste resources. Amid the chaos, Lyra received word from a young scientist, Aaron, who had been studying the Predator ship's energy signatures. "Commander," he said breathlessly, "their engines overheat when we disrupt the energy flow repeatedly. We can force them to retreat if we time it right." She coordinated a series of precise energy bursts, timed to overload the cruiser's systems. The attack was not without risk. If they failed, the human defenses could be destroyed. But success would prove something the galaxy had never seen, that humans could challenge the predators and survive. The plan worked. Predator ships shuddered as systems failed, forced to retreat to avoid catastrophic damage. Smaller fighters were knocked out of formation. Drones floated uselessly in orbit, their energy depleted. Humans had struck a decisive, clever blow against an enemy thought to be unbeatable. The colony erupted in cautious celebration. People emerged from shelters to watch the enemy retreat, cheering, hugging, and crying tears of relief. They had survived the first wave, and they had done so with brains, courage, and ingenuity. Lyra stood silently, watching the retreating fleet. She knew this victory was only temporary. The predators would return, stronger and more determined. But humans had proven something vital. They were not weak. They were unpredictable, clever, and capable of facing the galaxy's deadliest predators. In orbit, the predators communicated in clicks and growls, frustration and confusion mingling with a new emotion, fear. "These humans," one said quietly, almost in disbelief. "They are not like the others. They learn, they fight. They survive." But humanity had drawn its line, and it had held. They had survived where others would have fallen, outsmarted a species that ruled through fear, and shown that even the smallest colony could defy the galaxy's deadliest hunters. For the first time, the predators doubted themselves. For the first time, they tasted resistance, and it was bitter. For the humans, hope burned brighter than any star. They had learned that courage, intelligence, and ingenuity were weapons more powerful than any blaster. And Commander Lyra Vance knew that as long as humans remained clever, adaptable, and united, they could survive anything the galaxy threw at them. The battle was over for now, but the war had only begun. Nova Aegis had survived the first wave, but humanity had only just begun to fight back. And in the darkness of space, the galaxy waited, uncertain what would come next, because it had never faced humans like these before. The predators were furious. For the first time in their long history of conquest, a species had resisted them with skill, courage, and intelligence. Their first attack had been delayed, and one of their largest ships had been forced to retreat. That should have been impossible. They were the hunters of the galaxy, feared and respected, yet the humans of Nova Aegis had survived. Across the colony, the news of the predators' setback spread like wildfire. Humans had gained confidence, and even the most skeptical citizens began to believe that survival was possible. Commander Lyra Vance convened a council meeting with her top strategists. The room was small, but the minds inside it were sharp and full of determination. "We have shown them we are not easy prey," Lyra said firmly, pointing at the holographic map of the galaxy. "But this is only the beginning. They will return with more ships, more firepower, and more fury. We cannot fight them alone. We must find allies and prepare every colony to survive together. Every small victory counts. Every clever strategy matters. We are humans. We survive when others cannot." Each message carried warnings, instructions, and a call for cooperation. Humans were resourceful. They had learned to adapt to harsh worlds, survive in isolation, and think quickly. Meanwhile, the predators regrouped. Their first attack had failed, and they could not accept it. Across the galaxy, their fleets mobilized, targeting multiple human colonies simultaneously. They wanted to destroy all signs of resistance, to ensure no other human settlements would dare challenge them. On Nova Aegis, preparations intensified. Humans built underground bunkers, fortified orbital stations, and trained civilians in basic defense tactics. They created mobile teams that could repair damaged equipment, relocate supplies, and assist in combat. Everyone had a role, from scientists to farmers, from engineers to teachers. In every small act, humans turned ordinary skills into weapons of survival. Lyra focused on intelligence gathering. She sent small stealth ships to observe predator movements, using cloaking devices and altered sensor signals to avoid detection. One team, led by a young officer named Aaron, infiltrated a patrol near an uninhabited asteroid field. They collected crucial data about the predators, energy shields, weapon cooldowns, and flight patterns. Even though the predators had superior technology, humans found weaknesses where others had never thought to look. The first real strike came not from Nova Aegis, but from a smaller human colony orbiting a gas giant. The predators attacked with brutal speed, destroying the orbital defenses in moments. Yet the humans had anticipated this. Automated drones, disguised as cargo ships, circled the gas giant and detonated precisely when the predator fighters entered. Explosions rocked the attackers, damaging engines and forcing them into evasive maneuvers. When the news reached Nova Aegis, the people cheered quietly. Another human colony had survived the first strike. Humans were learning how to fight as a network, sharing knowledge and supporting each other across vast distances. Each success inspired more resistance. Lyra realized that psychological warfare was now as important as physical defense. The predators were used to fear and submission. They did not expect clever resistance or collaboration among weaker species. Humans could turn this expectation into a weapon. She instructed teams to broadcast false signals, create decoy fleets, and manipulate the predators' sense of honor and strategy. Every small act caused confusion, frustration, and hesitation among the invaders. In orbit above Nova Aegis, a Predator commander observed the humans' network of defenses and communications signals. He could not understand how a species so small, so seemingly fragile, could anticipate their moves so effectively. "They adapt too fast," he said in a low growl. "They are unpredictable." This is dangerous. Humans worked in teams, communicating instantly with sensors and relay systems. Every move was calculated. When the predators advanced toward the asteroid belt, expecting an easy path to attack, humans were ready. Drones detonated in sequence, knocking several fighters off course. Orbital energy nets overloaded the shields of a larger ship, forcing it to retreat. Humans had turned the environment into their weapon, using the very fabric of space and planetary physics against a superior enemy. The predators, for the first time, realized that brute strength alone would not defeat these humans. They had fought countless species, conquered worlds, and broken civilizations, but humans were different. Humans thought, adapted, and persevered. Each failed strike frustrated them more, and their attacks became reckless. In their fury, they exposed vulnerabilities humans had been waiting for. Lyra seized the opportunity. Small strike teams launched covert attacks on damaged predator ships, disabling weapons and engines. They moved with precision, never overextending, always retreating before the predators could respond. Humans had learned to fight with strategy, patience, and courage. Every victory, however small, was a message. Humans were not prey. On the ground, civilians also contributed. Engineers rigged mining lasers to act as artillery. Farmers created chemical barriers that interfered with predator sensors. Students operated communications relays, sending false information to confuse attackers. Everyone from the youngest child to the oldest scientist had a role. They were united in purpose, and that unity became their strength. The psychological impact on the predators was growing. They had expected humans to submit to panic and to fall easily. Instead, they faced a species that learned quickly, adapted constantly, and resisted with courage. Their confidence faltered, replaced by uncertainty. One predator commander whispered almost in disbelief, "We have never faced anything like this. They learn, they survive." But humans had proven that even the smallest colonies could survive with intelligence, coordination, and courage. They had turned every disadvantage into an opportunity and every weakness into a strength. As night fell on Nova Aegis, Lyra stood on the observation deck, looking at the distant glow of predator ships retreating to regroup. The planet was quiet for now, but humans were not resting. Engineers repaired damaged drones, scientists analyzed data, and commanders trained civilians for the battles to come. Humans were preparing, adapting, and growing stronger. The first major victory for humanity had been achieved, but it was a fragile victory. The predators were not defeated. They were enraged and would return with even greater force. Yet the humans had gained something more valuable than weapons or ships. They had gained confidence, unity, and proof that intelligence and courage could overcome raw power. Lyra walked through the command center, checking on each team. "Remember," she said, "every action counts. Every small success builds a larger one. The predators think they are invincible. Let them think. Then we strike." Their communication was filled with anger, confusion, and disbelief. They had underestimated humans as all other species had. But this time the mistake had cost them more than pride. It had cost them valuable ships and personnel. One predator, older and more cautious than the rest, warned, "We cannot fight them as we have fought others. They think. They adapt. They survive." This is unacceptable. The night ended with a sense of cautious optimism. Humans on Nova Aegis had survived the first wave and had helped other colonies do the same. They had outsmarted the galaxy's deadliest hunters and shown that unity, courage, and intelligence could turn even the smallest group into a formidable force. Commander Lyra Vance stood alone on the observation deck, looking at the stars. "They may return," she whispered, "but we are ready. We are humans. We survive, and the galaxy will remember that." The battle was far from over, but humanity had taken its first real steps toward proving itself in a galaxy that had underestimated them. The predators would come again, more powerful and more determined, but the humans were ready. They had learned to fight with brains as much as courage, with strategy as much as heart. Nova Aegis had survived, and humans across the galaxy would soon follow. For the first time in history, humans were no longer insignificant. They were a species capable of resisting the most feared hunters in the galaxy, and this realization would change everything. The galaxy had taken notice. Humans, a species once considered weak and insignificant, had survived the first waves of predator attacks. They had outsmarted the deadliest hunters in the galaxy, and whispers of their ingenuity spread across star systems. Nova Aegis had become a symbol, a beacon of human courage and cleverness. But Commander Lyra Vance knew that symbols alone would not win a war. The predators would return stronger, smarter, and more ruthless. Humans had to strike before the predators could recover. Lyra gathered her council, a group of engineers, tacticians, and scientists who had proven their brilliance during the first attacks. "The predators are regrouping," she said, pointing to the holographic map showing distant fleets moving through hyperlanes. "We cannot wait for them to strike again. We must take the fight to them. We need to disrupt their supply lines, gather intelligence, and show them that humanity will not only defend, it will attack intelligently." Small strike teams would infiltrate predator patrols, minefields would be laid in critical space lanes, and decoys would lure enemy ships into traps. Every move was calculated to maximize impact while minimizing risk. Lyra chose a team of the most skilled pilots and engineers, including Aaron, the young scientist who had previously studied predator energy signatures. Their mission was daring: infiltrate a patrol near the predator home sector, gather intelligence, and disrupt their fleet's operations. The team prepared in silence, knowing that one mistake could mean death, but also knowing that success would shift the balance of power. The human ships were small, stealthy, and unassuming. They blended with asteroid debris and operated under carefully manipulated sensor readings that made them appear like harmless mining drones. As they approached the predator patrol, tension filled the cockpit. The predators were ruthless hunters, capable of detecting even the smallest anomaly. Every movement had to be precise. Aaron checked the systems repeatedly. "Energy fluctuations are stable. Shields are optimal, navigation locked. We can do this." Small drones, previously disguised as harmless debris, latched onto the predator ships, overloading key systems. Explosions erupted, sending panic through the alien fleet. The predators had underestimated human ingenuity once again. "Impressive," Lyra whispered, "but this is only the start." Navigation patterns were altered to confuse the predators, and small bursts of energy disrupted targeting systems. Each success was carefully measured. The humans did not seek to destroy everything, only to cripple, delay, and gather valuable intelligence. Meanwhile, back on Nova Aegis, the colony coordinated additional operations. Mining ships were repurposed as long-range artillery, targeting supply convoys and small predator outposts. Civilians operated drones and relay stations, feeding real-time data to strike teams. Every individual played a role, turning the colony itself into a living, adaptive weapon. In the midst of these operations, Lyra received reports from other human colonies. Some had been attacked, but they had survived through coordinated tactics, clever traps, and ingenuity. One colony had lured a predator squad into a nebula, using plasma storms to disrupt their sensors and destroy several ships. Another had used magnetic fields to immobilize fighters temporarily. Humans were learning from each other, sharing strategies, and becoming a network of resistance across the galaxy. The predators were growing increasingly frustrated. Their initial confidence had been shattered. Every attack met with clever traps, every movement countered with precise strategy. They were hunters, yet their prey had learned to anticipate and manipulate them. "They think too much," one predator growled. "They plan, they adapt, they survive. This is unacceptable." Small teams feigned retreats, leaving false trails and traps in open space. Predator ships, compelled by their code, pursued them without suspicion, only to fall into ambushes and energy nets carefully placed by humans. The psychological impact was profound. Predator commanders began doubting their assumptions, questioning strategies that had never failed before. Human ingenuity had become a weapon as deadly as any laser or missile. Lyra understood that this battle was as much about the mind as it was about ships and weapons. One of the boldest operations involved a direct strike near a predator forward base. Humans used cloaked ships to enter the base undetected, planting devices that disrupted communication arrays and overloaded energy grids. The attack was surgical, designed to minimize casualties but maximize confusion and chaos. Predator patrols were forced to retreat to protect vital assets, slowing reinforcements and giving humans more freedom in surrounding systems. Aaron, piloting one of the stealth ships, navigated through tight corridors inside the enemy base. "We're inside their systems," he whispered, eyes wide with excitement. "We can access data on fleet movements and supply chains. This is a game changer." Humans returned to Nova Aegis with critical intelligence, showing not only that the predators could be infiltrated, but also that their networks had weaknesses humans could exploit. Each mission, each small victory, strengthened morale and reinforced the belief that humanity could survive and thrive against the galaxy's deadliest hunters. On the surface, civilians celebrated quietly. They understood that survival was the product of unity, intelligence, and courage. Engineers repaired damaged defenses, scientists analyzed data, and students helped train new recruits. Every individual's contribution mattered, and the people of Nova Aegis felt proud to be part of something larger than themselves. Lyra knew that the next challenge would be even greater. The predators would not ignore these losses forever. They would return with larger fleets, more advanced ships, and deadlier weapons. But humans had learned lessons that no predator had ever expected. They had learned to think differently, to adapt quickly, and to fight as a network, not as isolated colonies. In orbit, the predators discussed their failures with anger and disbelief. "These humans, they are unpredictable," one said. "They do not submit, they do not panic, they adapt. We must strike harder, we must destroy them before they grow stronger." Every attack teaches us more. Humans were no longer merely defending. They were shaping the battlefield, forcing the predators to react to their strategies. The psychological warfare had a profound effect. Predator commanders, once confident and ruthless, now hesitated. They second-guessed orders, overanalyzed movements, and became increasingly frustrated by human unpredictability. The hunters had never encountered prey that could anticipate, adapt, and manipulate with such skill. Lyra used this hesitation to expand human influence. Small fleets patrolled key sectors, protecting colonies and setting traps for predator scouts. Intelligence networks connected human settlements across vast distances, ensuring that every victory and every lesson learned could be shared instantly. The humans were becoming more than survivors. They were a coordinated, adaptive force capable of challenging the galaxy's most feared species. On Nova Aegis, Lyra addressed the colony. "We have learned to fight like no one else in the galaxy. We have turned every disadvantage into an advantage. The predators may return with more power, but we have something they do not: brains, courage, and unity. We are humans, and we survive." They adapted, they strategized, and they endured. The hunters of the galaxy had met prey that was impossible to intimidate, impossible to predict, and impossible to crush without careful planning. Lyra looked at the stars, feeling a mixture of determination and anticipation. The predators would return more dangerous than ever, but humanity had grown stronger, smarter, and more united. The coming battles would be difficult, but they were ready. Humans had turned survival into a weapon, courage into strategy, and intelligence into hope. The war was far from over, but the tide was beginning to turn. The galaxy was learning that humans were not easy prey. They were clever, adaptable, and relentless. And Commander Lyra Vance knew that this was only the beginning of humanity's rise in the stars. In the darkness of space, the predators whispered among themselves, uncertainty creeping into their voices. "These humans, we underestimated them," one said. "They think they adapt, they survive. This is dangerous." The humans had proven that survival was only the first step. The next step was victory. And for the first time, the galaxy began to understand what humans were truly capable of. The galaxy was holding its breath. Across the spiral arms, stories of human ingenuity, courage, and defiance had spread like wildfire. Every colony knew that the humans of Nova Aegis had survived attacks that would have destroyed others. And now, humanity was preparing for a confrontation that would determine the balance of power. Commander Lyra Vance stood on the observation deck, gazing at the distant horizon of stars. The predators were regrouping, assembling their greatest fleet, and this time they were coming with everything they had. "We have prepared as best we can," Lyra said, her voice steady as she addressed the council. "This will be our largest battle yet, but we are ready. We know their weaknesses, we know their habits, and we know ourselves. We fight not just with weapons, but with intelligence, courage, and unity. Every human in every colony has a role. We survive together, and together we will prevail. The predators believed that raw power would crush humanity, but humans had proven that cleverness, coordination, and resilience could outmatch sheer force. The fleet of human ships moved out, small but agile, weaving through asteroid fields and planetary rings to avoid detection. Cloaking devices, decoys, and false sensor readings masked their true positions. Teams of engineers monitored energy systems, prepared to redirect power to shields, weapons, and propulsion at a moment's notice. Civilians and scientists worked in coordination, relaying real-time data to the fleet and preparing backup systems. Lyra's plan was daring. Humans would strike not at the front lines, but at the heart of the Predator operation. Small strike teams would infiltrate the enemy's forward bases, disable communications, and sabotage key ships, while the main fleet engaged in strategic diversionary attacks. Every move relied on precision, timing, and an understanding of Predator behavior. Humans had studied the hunters carefully, learning how their sense of honor, strategy, and predictability could be exploited. As the first phase of the operation began, small human ships slipped past perimeter patrols, appearing as harmless debris to Predator sensors. Drones activated, latching onto hulls and disabling systems with pinpoint accuracy. Explosions rocked the enemy fleet, causing chaos as Predator ships scrambled to respond. Lyra watched closely, directing teams in real time, adjusting strategies as the battle unfolded. On the ground, colonies fired orbital cannons and laser arrays, targeting key points in the Predator fleet. Civilians, trained for this moment, coordinated energy pulses, redirected power through underground grids, and maintained communication networks. Every person, no matter their skill or background, became part of a synchronized galaxy-wide effort. The Predators were stunned. They had expected submission, terror, and chaos. Instead, they faced organized resistance, precise strikes, and a species that adapted faster than they could anticipate. Their commanders barked orders, trying to regain control, but every move was anticipated, every maneuver countered. Humans had become more than prey. They were tactical equals in a battle of wits and courage. Lyra's team infiltrated the central Predator forward base. Using stealth technology, they navigated through narrow corridors, avoiding patrols and security systems. Aaron, the young scientist who had once studied Predator energy signatures, now applied his knowledge in real time, disabling critical systems and redirecting power surges to cause confusion and damage. "This is it," Lyra whispered as they reached the command hub. "Take the systems offline and disrupt their fleet communications." Alarms blared, but they moved with precision, planting devices and redirecting data streams. Predator fighters, suddenly deprived of coordination, faltered and collided. Ships that once moved with deadly precision now floundered, vulnerable to strategic attacks from the human fleet. As the battle raged, humans on Nova Aegis and allied colonies executed daring maneuvers. Mining lasers became long-range weapons, orbital satellites fired with exact timing, and small strike teams lured Predator ships into ambushes. Every decision was calculated, every action part of a larger plan. Humans had turned the battlefield itself into a weapon, exploiting terrain, gravity, and physics to their advantage. The psychological impact on the Predators was immense. They had never faced an enemy that combined courage, intelligence, and adaptability in such a way. Every failed strike, every ambush, every clever maneuver undermined their confidence. Predator commanders, once arrogant and unshakable, now hesitated, second-guessing strategies that had always succeeded before. Lyra observed the chaos with a mixture of satisfaction and focus. "This is what we've trained for," she said. "Every colony, every person, every ship is contributing. We fight as one. We fight with brains, with courage, with unity." The Predators, faced with unprecedented disruption, attempted a retreat, but human ships anticipated their escape routes, cutting off corridors and forcing them into narrow channels where traps awaited. One Predator commander, larger and older than the others, realized the truth. "These humans, they are not prey," he hissed. "They think, they adapt, they survive. They are predators themselves." On the surface, civilians and engineers maintained defenses, ready to respond to any counterattack. Every person contributed to the operation, showing that humanity's strength was not in individual power, but in unity, coordination, and ingenuity. As the Predators fled, Lyra allowed herself a moment of reflection. Humanity had survived impossible odds. They had faced the galaxy's deadliest hunters and not only endured, they had outsmarted them. Every strategy, every clever maneuver, every act of courage had contributed to a decisive victory. Humans were no longer underestimated, no longer insignificant, no longer prey. The news spread quickly across human colonies. Survivors of the battle shared stories of daring strikes, clever traps, and victories that seemed impossible. Communities once isolated now felt connected, united by the knowledge that humanity could stand together against the greatest threats in the galaxy. Lyra addressed the council one final time. "We have proven something today, not just to the predators, but to the galaxy. Humans are clever, courageous, and adaptable. We are survivors and we are fighters. We are capable of protecting ourselves, our colonies, and each other. This is only the beginning, but it is a beginning no one will forget." Their arrogance had been shattered, their assumptions challenged, and their confidence broken. "We cannot underestimate them," one said quietly. "They are not like any other species we have hunted. They survive, they fight, they are predators in their own right." The galaxy was vast, full of threats and dangers, but humanity had proven that they were ready. Courage, intelligence, ingenuity, and unity had turned vulnerability into strength, weakness into strategy, and survival into triumph. For the first time, the galaxy recognized humanity as more than a fledgling species. Humans had faced impossible odds and prevailed. They had defended their colonies, outsmarted the galaxy's most feared hunters, and shown that they could think, adapt, and fight in ways no other species could. Lyra turned to the horizon. "The predators will learn to fear us not because we are the strongest, but because we are humans. We think, we adapt, we survive. And we will continue to do so, no matter what the galaxy throws at us." As dawn touched the planet, Lyra reflected on the journey so far. From the first contact with the predators to the coordinated strikes across multiple colonies, humans had learned to turn every disadvantage into an opportunity. Courage had become a weapon, intelligence had become armor, and unity had become their greatest strength. In the distance, the remnants of the Predator fleet retreated, battered and confused. Humanity had changed the course of history. They had shown the galaxy that survival was only the first step. The next step was victory, and humanity would rise to meet it, stronger, smarter, and united. Lyra looked around at her people, engineers, scientists, pilots, and civilians alike, and felt a deep sense of pride. They had faced the greatest hunters in the galaxy and emerged victorious. The story of Nova Aegis and humanity as a whole would inspire generations. The message was clear. Humans were not to be underestimated, feared, or ignored. They were capable of achieving the impossible. As the sun rose over Nova Aegis, humans across the galaxy prepared for the future with renewed determination. They had survived, they had fought, and they had won. Humanity had proven itself worthy of its place among the stars, and the galaxy would never forget it. The predators had learned their lesson. Humans were no longer easy prey. They were predators in their own right, clever, relentless, and united. And for Commander Lyra Vance and her people, this was just the beginning. The galaxy had changed, and humans would continue to rise, proving time and again that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome even the deadliest threats. Humanity's legacy was no longer one of weakness, but of resilience, ingenuity, and unstoppable strength. The stars belonged to those who dared to fight, and humans had dared and won.